Hey Spurs, today we're going to talk about nonfiction text structures. So whenever you're reading a nonfiction story, which is a story that is true, it is arranged and organized in a certain way. There are 5 common ways that nonfiction stories are organized by description, sequence, compare, contrast, cause and effect, problem and solution. But we are only going to focus on 2 of them. So we're only focusing on cause and effect and then problem and solution. So as you're reading your informational books, which you will pick an informational book tomorrow, you'll read the story and see if you can figure out if it's a cause and effect kind of story or if it's a problem and solution. So I'm going to go over with you what cause and effect is, what problem and solution is. We're going to read a story together and determine if it's cause and effect or if it's problem and solution. Okay, so if you want to jot down some notes, Spurs, cause and effect is why something happens and the result of it happening. Okay, the cause is why something happens, and then the effect is the result. Okay. So a cause could be animals are being harmed and the result is plastic bags are polluting the oceans. So as you're reading your informational book, sometimes it might be a cause and effect kind of story. Okay? So, or it could be a problem and solution. Problem and solution is when it's similar to cause and effect. However, what makes it different is that it's going to have a solution that's offered. Okay, so a problem and solution book, they will also tell you something is happening, which is the problem, and what's causing the problem. However, it will also have a solution. Some books, they're just telling you the cause and effects. They're just informing you about a situation. But a problem and solution book will go a step further and offer a solution. So we're going to read our story in Storyworks. And our story is called Mountain of Fire, the Eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. So this is in Storyworks if you do want to pull it up and follow along. All right, Mountain of Fire. Eric Smith, 10, meaning 10 years old, had no idea that the world around him was about to explode. It was May 18th, 1980. Eric was with his dad, Buzz, and his 7-year-old brother, Adam. They were camping in a forest near Mount St. Helens. It is one of the tallest mountains in Washington state. The mountain towered over them. The day before, the Smiths had hiked the forest trails. At night, they slept in their tent under a sky lit up with stars. Now it was a new day. The boys happily talked about their plans. Their dads cooked breakfast at the camp, on the camp stove. The only sound was a sizzle of bacon and eggs. All around them, the woods were as quiet as a whisper, but all was not peaceful around Mount St. Helens that day. That's because this mountain is not just a mountain. Here it says a volcano erupts. This is a photograph of Mount St. Helens as it was erupting in May 1980. So Spurs, this eruption happened 40 years ago today. All right, next page. It is a volcano, and no one knew that it was about to erupt. The terror begins. The Smiths had just finished their breakfast when they heard a noise. Crack, crack, crack. Eric thought it was a hunter's gun, but then he saw a huge gray cloud above. Strange rocks fell from the sky. The rocks bounced off the Smiths' heads. They felt light, like hot ping-pong balls. Then there was a loud roar. Eric stared in shock as 500-year-old trees fell around them. Eric's dad grabbed his children. They were able to take shelter under the trunk of a fallen tree. The ground shook. The air was hot, as if a huge dragon was breathing fire. "Make it stop!" Eric's mind screamed. The terror was just starting. Silent volcanoes. About 1,500 of Earth's volcanoes are active. This means they have the power to erupt. Volcanoes that are unlikely to erupt are called extinct. Some active volcanoes look dangerous. For example, the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii oozes lava. Most active volcanoes look like regular mountains. They sit silently as people ski their slopes or climb their cliffs. Big eruptions happen only once every 10 years or so. When they do happen, though, they are often disastrous. The United States has 169 active volcanoes. Most are in Hawaii and Alaska, but some are in a group of mountains called the Cascades. This group zigzags up from California through Oregon, Washington, and into Canada. Mount St. Helens is in the Cascades. In the past few thousand years, it has erupted many times. But in the late 1850s, Mount St. Helens went quiet. It stayed quiet for more than 100 years. As time passed, most people seemed to forget that Mount St. Helens was a volcano. Many built houses around the mountain. This included the Smith family. Eric and Adam grew up hiking in the area's thick forest. It was a beautiful place to live. Before we go to the next section, I wanted to show you this map, this text feature here, this map. This is the map of the United States. As a point of reference, we live here in Texas, and they are showing you where Mount St. Helens is. It is in Washington State, which is in the far upper left region in the Pacific Northwest. And here's Mount St. Helens right here. Here's the Cascade Mountains, the range that they're talking about. It's a whole series, is an area where there's lots of mountains. Okay, so this is where it began. California's down here. Okay. The beautiful mountain. Native Americans knew that this beautiful mountain was really a dangerous volcano. They called it Luwalakluf. This means mountain of fire. Warning signs. About 2 months before the Smiths camping trip, Mount St. Helens started to wake up. Earthquakes rumbled below the mountain. Pilots flying over it saw smoke rising from the mountain's peak. But nobody knew what was about to happen. Volcanoes are very unpredictable. Some erupt with little warning. Others rumble and then go quiet for hundreds of years. Police told people living near the mountain to leave their homes and find a safe place to stay. Soon the mountain quieted down. Many believed that the worst was over. Eric's dad decided it would be safe to take the boys on a camping trip. He chose an area 8 miles from the mountain. He didn't believe that Mount St. Helens could be dangerous. He was wrong. It was 8:32 on that Sunday morning when the Smiths heard that terrifying crack, crack, crack. The sound was the sound of the mountain splitting open. The roar was from the ash, melted rock, and ice being blasted into the sky. The strange light rocks that fell on the Smiths were hardened lava known as pumice. A blizzard of hot ash followed. "We've got to get out of here," Eric's dad cried. They began their escape from the forest. They walked for miles over fallen trees and piles of debris. The ground burned their feet. They were covered in ash. They looked like ghosts. This is a ruined wilderness. The eruption tore 1,300 feet off the top of Mount St. Helens. All plants within 230 square miles were killed. So this is the top part that came off, and as you can see, all the vegetation is gone. Okay, now here's a picture of Mount St. Helens today. In the 37 years since the eruption, the mountain has slowly healed. Many plants and animals live here. So this is how it looked. It says 37 years because this article is actually 3 years ago. But it is now 40 years. And since we're looking at this, you remember how we talked about forest fires last week in science? Or 2 weeks ago in science? I want you to think about that question and how it asked what would be the after effects of a fire, of a wildfire. Okay? And as you can see, although it's destroyed, sometimes fires can cause new growth. Okay, there are some animals and some things that actually need really high heat, some seeds, to promote its growth. So, tragedy, but nature has its way, and now nature has really revived itself. All right, hoping for safety. Eric was terrified. His mom and sister hadn't come on the camping trip. Were they still safe at home? Eric was very thirsty. He, his brother, and their dad had no water. The area's sparkling streams had turned into dirty soups of ash and mud. Finally, Eric's dad saw water coming up from the ground. He was able to collect about 2 cups of it. It was warm and dirty, but Eric gulped it down. They'd been hiking for almost 12 hours when they heard helicopters. Rescuers had been searching for survivors. Now they had found 3, the tired and lucky Smiths. A helicopter brought them to safety. They met up with Eric's mom and sister. They learned that their house was gone. It had been carried away by a landslide. 57 people were killed in the eruption. The first months after the disaster were very hard for the Smiths. Eric and Adam were afraid to play outside. They missed their home, but the Smiths built a new house, farther from the volcano. Over time, their fear turned to thankfulness. They had survived the fury of Mount St. Helens. All right. So, since we read our story, let's think of the way the story was organized. Was it a cause and effect, where they talk about why something happened and the result? Or was it a problem and solution? So after thinking about that, it's cause and effect. Okay, because cause and effect is why something happens and the result of that happening. So why something happens was the area, why something happened was the volcano of Mount St. Helens erupted. And the result was that it destroyed all the vegetation and a lot of the houses that were around it. Okay, because it became an active volcano. So, whenever you're reading your story, Spurs, your informational text this week, tomorrow, you're going to determine, is the story that you're reading a cause and effect story, or is it a problem and solution? If this story was a problem and solution, then they would have offered some kind of solution of ways, I don't know, that people could have prevented it, although it's nature. So, can't really prevent those things, but maybe if they had some kind of information about ways that they can help monitor the eruptions. But they didn't. It was strictly cause and effect. All right, Spurs, if you have any questions, come see me, message me, send me chat, text, and I'll get a hold of you and help you through it. Talk to you later. Bye.